remember this game being hard.
Sure.
It is. Do you want just like the game ID or which game it
Yeah, do you
was
want to
or
just
share
play it
screen
and
or?
then you can share it here and we can watch it together?
Okay, yeah. Let's see. Screen one. I want to make sure I have audio going
Yeah, cool. I can see you. You're playing Victor. Let's see.
into Aurelia.
Into Aurelia. Okay, awesome. Do you want to pause for a minute and so I can look at your? Yeah, sweet. So you're playing against an Aurelia with Ignite. You've got a Rammus. They've got an Echo. Cool. So going into this game, what are you thinking about? What are you trying to plan for?
Whenever I see our teams, I see quite a bit of scaling and
Mm-hmm.
pretty easy front to back fighting.
Mm-hmm.
So I think going into my matchup, my focus, individually ranged into melee, I should be able to continuously poke her. I took Airy. I think I'm building Ludens as they really don't have any tanks on their team that I'm going to need burn from.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's just kind of like I do see that she has Ignite over my teleport, so I'm never really going to have an all in unless she just gets so low that I can win. But to me, it's really about making sure I get my farm, poking her down, and trying to keep the game as stable as I can until 2, 3 items start coming across.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Do you want to double click your character so I can also see your rune choices? There's a little triangle. Yeah, go back to Victor. Yeah, there you go. So you went Airy, Mana Flow Band, Transcendent Scorch, Bone Plating, and Shield Bash. Do you want to talk me through your runes and maybe how they fit into your playstyle here?
Yeah, I guess like the ones that are like a choice a bit is Airy,
Mm-hmm.
which I guess I kind of touched on. Like I'm gonna want to be poking. Um, Maybe a question that I have is I know first strike people take that often,
Mm-hmm.
and I sometimes even see it in like more of the scaling matchups. But I went airy here just because I like to have a little bit more power in lane with poking. Um, I get mana flow, I guess, is just standard, transcendent standard. I took Scorch, just kind of the same thing as airy, just being in lane,
Yeah.
melee into range. Like I'm not gonna win the all in, so I need to do my best to make sure that I'm poking her down so that she just doesn't kill me whenever, the second my wave is not in a good state.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I don't think you're off too far off. I think like you are correct. You can Victor generally is a good lane bully. I play a lot of Victor, so I'm pretty familiar. I can talk you through the first strike path as well. Um, so the reason actually generally people go first strike is because one, you have to determine if that poke is gonna stick, right? So like, yeah, you can poke her, but Aurelia heals so much, right? Like if you think about kind of the early game perspective, Aurelia has a ton of lane control with her Q resets, right? And with every
uh-huh.
Q, she actually heals a ton. And the way Aurelia wins lane against like a control mage is she has very aggressive all-ins. You called that out perfectly right. So in the early game, right, your poke isn't really going to matter if you know what I mean. If there's a good
Hmm.
Aurelia player, she's going to be constantly trimming the wave faster than you can because her attacks do more damage. She has bonus attack speed. Probably she took tenacity too, I'm just going to assume. So your W is even more useless. But Aurelia is terrifying at level 2 too, right? So you kind of know that like in the level 1, you can't really get that poke to stick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So arguably, I actually would have gone the first strike route in this matchup. Um, One thing I would also say about this matchup is that you do have a Rammus, so there is like a wave manipulation element that you can play to your advantage in this matchup, especially with an Aurelia who loves to push you in. So I'd like to see the first few minutes, and then I can see like where you're playing and how you're playing Victor, and we can talk some more. Was that helpful? Did that make sense?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I that makes me understand. So I guess a
Yeah.
clarifying question is, do you ever take first strike? Like I guess how much of
Mhm.
the damage buff do you consider taking first strike? Or is it simply just you're gonna accrue more gold through the poke, the
Mhm.
damage is a bonus?
Yeah, so the reason people usually take first strike is cuz the other runes just don't do anything for you. So yeah, it's mostly for the gold in this instance. The extra damage from first strike is pretty garbage compared to Scorch, Airy, that combination. So you have a couple options there, but generally first strike is when like, because in high, if you think about it, for example, Victor's a lane bully, but that doesn't mean he's kill dependent, and he can't get kills reliably, right? So
Right.
that's why you go that like first strike secondary. That's probably actually his most common rune, I'd say. I think Airy Scorch is very less common, unless you're
Interesting.
into that abusable matchup. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. I personally like the Airy Scorch. I'm with you. I definitely take advantage of that. But you kind of have to mold your play style into utilizing it optimally. And you can't really do that against an Aurelia because you're kind of on the back foot.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
Let's play out the first minute or so and then I can see where you're at and give some comments. Are you pretty familiar with like the early levels and what kind of,
Not too
interactions to
much.
look for? Okay.
I took a bit of a break from League and then I came back and
Sure.
then I've kind of like jumped all over the map, all
Mhm.
sorts of different champions, all sorts of roles, like all different roles, almost all champions. So
Gotcha.
like I don't have a lot of experience with the Victor matchups, so a lot of it is kind of like a lot of my questions are going to be centered around that kind of maybe matchup dependent type things.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess
Yeah.
one question before we start, because
Mhm.
it's something that I'm going to look for, is at what point does my poke really start to stick against Aurelia? And that's something I tend to struggle with. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to spam EQ and waste all my mana and then kind of not be able to
Yeah.
stay in lane with the TP advantage,
Mhm.
not kind of not mattering.
So here's the thing about the Aurelia matchup. I actually think that there's never really a point where your poke necessarily sticks, and that's not the game that you should be playing when you're playing versus Aurelia. I can explain a little bit more. So Victor's really good at adapting to the game state. You can play him in multiple ways. What that means is like in the past, Victor has been like a really passive, like really weak until you spend the 1100 gold to get your upgrades. Now what Riot did is they made it so that you can unlock Victor's breakpoints through getting CS. So actually, the most important thing for a Victor player is to get that CS right there. Yeah, exactly. So every minion is a hex fragment. Cannons are 5, and his champion takedowns or assists are 25. So there's a couple different breakpoints for Victor. One is your E upgrade, right? So once you upgrade that E, you should have around like 4 points in your E, and you can insta clear most of the back wave. The second one is when you hit your lost chapter, because now you're less worried about mana concerns, right? So
Hmm.
what you should be looking for is those item breakpoints and wave manipulation breakpoints, so that you can kind of play a medium speed game. Does that make sense in terms of the game state?
Not sure what you mean by medium speed.
Yeah, so some games, right? Like you're gonna be playing Victor versus I don't know an Anivia, right? And you're both kind of these weak early game control mages. So neither of you are really playing for kills, so to speak. You win by hitting your item breakpoints, getting your team like objective and tempo from the mid lane. You win not by roaming, but by having the lane state usually in your favor. And Victor's really good at that because you can use your W to hold the wave.
Hmm.
I don't know if you use it that way, but that's definitely something I would suggest starting to do. So I wanted to see
Yeah.
if you do that. Yeah. Does
Okay.
that make sense? Medium usually means
Yeah.
like you don't have heavy ganking junglers. You're not looking at constantly skirmishing. Like you said, your team is heavy on the scaling side, right? You have Zeri, you have Ornn, you have Rammus, you have Victor. Their team is very scrappy. They've got the Pike who can roam from bot lane. They've got the Echo who's really strong in the early levels. They've got Jax who's pretty strong. So you kind of want to mitigate some of that early aggression from the other side in this game.
Okay. And then I'll say one more thing and then I'll play it.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, I think I think Ramos ganks like true like Ramos plays through mid
Mm-hmm.
heavy early
Mm-hmm.
and then I blow my lead. And if I remember correctly in this game, I think this is like 3 or 4 days old. It's like a little bit of tilt with like trying to force plays. So
Yeah.
I know at some point it's gonna get bad, I think.
Mm.
But I'd be curious from your perspective, like those when that fork in the road happens and I end up
Yeah.
taking the bad play, like what in those game states what I should be doing.
Yeah. So there's always kind of this mindset when you're in solo queue that you're playing to overcompensate for your teammates' mistakes or maybe even your own mistakes, right? But
Uh-huh.
that tends to lead to indecision, right? So the bottom line about League is like the more decisive you are and committed to that one playstyle, not necessarily the one playstyle, but the decision that you're making in the moment, the more committed you are, the better it's gonna go. So like even though maybe you died once, that's okay. But if you start dying 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, then I think you can start to take more of that into consideration where you're like, okay, I did something wrong. It's time to go and think about that later. But in the moment, it's usually for me, if I'm starting to notice that I'm going to tilt, I kind of just get into my own little world where I think about, okay, what are the things I need to do now to enable myself to be useful for my team this game? Because if you're playing to win, the algorithm honestly has it so that as long as you're not a net negative to your team, your chances of winning are much higher. So mitigating the amount of damage you're doing to your team. Does that make sense? I mean, do you understand what I'm saying when
Yeah.
I say that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like those hard enters, for example, at some point you kind of just got to ignore them, right? Because they're already a net negative. But you don't try to overcompensate for them because it's so out of your control to some extent. So
Okay.
my best advice is like do what's in your control, understand your champion, understand when you can do something because Victor's not a good roamer, right? He's not like he
Right.
can roam and kill people in the jungle. He can't really roam and set up ganks that easily. Actually, your W is pretty damn useless against an Aurelia because she can dash right out of it, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost pointless to have the perspective of like, let me just keep poking her. Let me just keep poking her. There's almost no point to that. You know what I'm saying? So
Okay.
optimize for getting yourself to your breakpoints.
Okay.
Yeah. Was that helpful?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's press play. I mean, I could probably identify those moments that I could see what's going on and then maybe give some more pointed advice. Cool. I like that you put a rate. Can I see that word if you don't mind hovering it? Nice. Okay. I would almost suggest putting it a little bit like lower so you can see the ramp, but that's all good.
Okay. Yeah, I think I always try to get it. I don't know if you can see my mouse. Can you see my mouse?
I actually can't see your mouse. That's weird.
Okay.
No
I
worries.
always I always try
Yeah.
to get it like right where I'll be able to spot like a raptor or two. And
Mm-hmm.
most junglers I think at the elo I'm playing with like they'll never really pull it into the bush.
Yeah.
So they'll usually end up showing the portrait. But yeah, if I can get that, are you saying lower closer to the ramp or lower closer
Yeah,
to in
so a
between
little
the
closer
walls?
to the ramp is because you want to see that entire path that a jungler can take down. I'm not saying this
Okay.
is going to happen. I'm not going to say Echo's going to E over that wall and come, but he could, you know? So you want
Okay.
to come as low as possible, yeah. Anyways, that's fine. I like that you ward early. That's pretty good. That's always good habit, because you're not guaranteed to get it later, and that gives your jungle information. So yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Okay, let's see. Cool.
So I think here I'm thinking, okay, she's gonna be able to hit
Mhm.
these 3 Qs. I need to like make sure I'm not next to them whenever
Yeah,
she
exactly.
gets done
Because she gets
hitting
that
them.
bonus auto range at 5 stacks, right? Yep, there you go. That's okay. It's pretty good. You traded back pretty damn well. That's good. Nice. Even more autos. Okay. Hmm. All right. Um, can we pause? Maybe rewind like 15 seconds or so. Yeah. So how familiar are you with experience tracking?
Uh, I know at the beginning of the game,
Hmm.
and anything past level 2, I do not.
No worries. So when do you get level two?
A melee and then one or two creeps.
Melee and then one or two creeps.
I mean, yeah, a wave and
A
then one or two
wave.
creeps.
Okay, got it. Yes.
Yeah, my bad.
So no worries. So you get level two at 7 minions. So your wave and then one more. You get level three at 14. So two waves and two melee minions from the third wave. So that's like
Okay,
the important first two levels because that gets you access to your full kit, right?
right.
So sometimes actually I don't recommend leveling up Victor W.
On
Um,
level 3 and
mm-hmm.
taking 2 points E. Yeah, okay.
2 points Q actually.
Oh,
Do
two
you
points
know?
Q.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you know why?
The shield maybe,
Yeah,
but
because that's a very, very powerful trading tool in the early levels. If you're going to play the poke oriented Victor, the Q helps you sustain through those early level trades because you can actually tank some minion damage with that Q. Um, After that, I would definitely max E because you want to get to
okay,
that. You want your E to be at least 4 points when it gets the upgrade. So that's what I would aim for Victor. Um,
okay.
So one thing I would suggest here is like as you see, she's kind of pushing the wave. She's not really committing to the hard push. But one thing I don't see you do is actually trimming the wave. Do you know what that means?
Yeah, cutting it down so that she can't
Mm-hmm.
hard crash it. Like
Yeah.
it'll be in a manageable state where I
Mm-hmm.
can freeze it.
Yeah. Victor's actually pretty decent at CSing under tower, but the thing that you want to avoid is that three
Is it
wave
bouncing
bounce.
back?
Hmm?
Yeah.
Yeah. So keeping in mind that like if she did want to crash it, it kind of you want to make sure that you avoid that situation. You want to have the lane on your side as much as possible in this matchup.
Okay. I think most games I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty bad at that. I'd say most games
No
it ends up
worries.
it ends
Yeah.
up bouncing back on me.
Mm.
Bouncing back to them.
Gotcha. Yeah, and a general tip to kind of avoid that is to constantly be autoing the melees, for instance, because your autos don't do much damage at all, and hers do, and she even gets that Q reset. So as she's queuing these minions dashing around, you can almost let her do whatever the heck she wants, right? Because you're looking to play the lane, you're looking to play the wave, you're not looking to play to kill her. You know what I mean?
So even in like this kind
Mm-hmm.
of state where she's also not pushing it, should I be
Yeah, because look at the
trimming it?
minions, right? You have three. She's got one, two, three, four, five, six.
7. There's one behind her.
Seven? Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. Seven. So she's got seven. So that's still hard shoving into you.
Okay.
But one thing you can do, and you asked me about how can I get my poke to stick, is identifying when Aurelia is about to queue. So if you want to rewind again a little bit.
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
I was walking like whenever she goes at that minion, I don't auto
Yeah, no worries. So you know she's going to want to queue that probably, right? There you go.
like that
That is
one.
an opportunity to hit some poke. Obviously, I'm not saying that one specifically because she's hitting level two, but in
Yeah.
general, predicting, like kind of thinking two steps ahead, right? Like, what's Aurelia going to do? Is she going to give up? Is she posturing to go for that minion? Is she posturing to queue that minion? And those are opportunities to get some poke in. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, I think my awareness
Yeah.
is there because
Yeah.
I play around don't get all in whenever she queues to a minion, but I'm
Yeah.
not doing the other half of like, okay, poke her once she jumps in.
Yeah, that takes practice, man. Honestly, it's not the easiest thing to do. But prepping your laser for those last hits is a great way to get some poke in. Looking for those opportunities where like you're tethering her, but also able to get that poke in is great. Do you know what I mean by tethering, by any chance?
Spacing.
Yeah, spacing. So you kind of are familiar with Aurelia's E. So making sure that you're out of range of that engage tool while hitting
Mm-hmm.
her. And the benefit is your E is way longer range, right? So
Yeah.
you have a lot of things in your favor. Yeah, go ahead. Press play. So I think that's fine.
I think there I was trying to
Mm-hmm.
predict her queuing
Mm,
onto those.
got it.
But yeah, there I could have traded back for sure.
Yeah, and that's good poke that can stick. That was pretty good.
Sorry about my dog.
No, you're
Yeah,
fine.
see here,
Mm,
this is like this is almost 1v2able for her because of minions and cannon.
yeah,
And so I am definitely like in game, I'm probably definitely like, do I give up this many minions to like sorry about my dog. This many
you're
minions
fine.
to shove her out of lane? Because I don't think she ever dies here.
That's
I
okay.
think
So
okay.
let's see how the gank plays out. I think you're not wrong. So the other reason that it's terrible is she's got 5 stacks. you know, so there's a lot of bad indicators that that's actually a terrible gank, and it could be. But it's also so this is one of those instances where you just have to commit. My perspective is going to go both ways because I can't tell you that this was right or this was wrong because let's think of it this way. Theoretically, this was a terrible gank, right? Cannon wave, she has 5 stacks. It's not really going to accomplish anything she's trying to back. However, one thing that it does accomplish is it gives you a favorable lane state, right?
Yes.
So now the
Yeah.
wave is in your side, and Garamus can come back if he chooses to. So that's one benefit. You didn't really commit to the gank, fine. If you had committed to the gank, you could have blown a flash, right? For instance, yeah, you
Yeah.
might lose some minions, but actually, you probably won't
Because the
because,
wave is so close.
yeah, the wave is one so close, and the tower is going to attack the cannon first. So you have like time to get back to this wave. You see how the cannon is ahead of all the other minions?
Yeah.
So the tower is it takes like 7 tower shots to kill a cannon. In those 7 tower shots, you have time to throw a couple autos, throw an E, throw a Q, and then back off. You don't have to commit to the all in. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
guess something else I didn't realize that I realize now is
Mm-hmm.
everything's on cooldown for me.
Ah.
I'm level 2 and no spells.
Okay.
So this
Yeah.
is like I'm not gonna auto her to death ever.
Oh, absolutely. So then, in those instances, I would just be spam pinging the shit out of your Ram